Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our session on data skills, recruitment, and retention in local government. Today's session has originated from various discussions across the sector. How can we compete with the private sector in pay? We don't use the programming languages that new applicants are trained in. And who's interested in a career in local government? I'm Mark Williams, and I'm the Senior Data Advisor within the Data Programme, working on anything from data standards, advanced and predictive analytics, and also performance management support that the LGA provides to councils free. Very fortunate to get to speak to many people across the sector and hear what councils are achieving, and I hope to share some of that work with you today. The purpose of today's session is to give the sector an inside look into the world of data in local government and share some examples of how councils are investing in data professionals. Today, we will start with two presentations that provide national and regional perspectives into capability frameworks and workforce strategies. I'm very grateful to Lisa Trickey and Welna Bowden from the LGA, as well as Hannah Humpleby from the London Office of Technology and Innovation for sharing this with us today. Afterwards, we will hear from two experts working in councils across the country who will share their transformation, campaigns and framework experience. A huge thank you to Tim Robinson from Manchester City Council and Edward Purchase from London Borough of Camden for giving their time this afternoon. Finally, for anyone joining live with us today, there'll be an opportunity for questions and answers. Please do put your questions in the Q&A section and we will do our best to cover as many as possible. We do have a good variation among our audience today, from heads of service, HR experts, and analytical professionals, so there should be something to take away from everyone today. Without hesitation, though, our first speakers join us today and provide a national workforce perspective, along with an overview of the skills framework to support councils with their recruitment and retention of data specialists. It's a pleasure to welcome Lisa Trickey, who is the lead advisor for Digital Futures and has been doing some remarkable work. They were previously the head of digital strategy and design at Dorset Council. That led the council through COVID and developed digital skills and capability across the council. So we're very lucky to have them with us today at the LGA. Also joining us is Welna Bowden, who is one of the country's leading workforce professionals and has developed bite-sized workforce planning sessions and leads on numerous strategic workforce planning initiatives. Please join me with a huge welcome to Lisa and Welna. Over to you.
Oh, that's a very kind introduction. Thank you, Mark, and it's lovely to be here today. And Welna and I are going to do a bit of a double act, and we'll just make sure the slides appear. Everybody, can you give me the nod, Welna? Can you see those? Brilliant.
I can.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So I thought it might just be really helpful today to start with a tiny bit of context, because there's been a huge focus on digital in government this year. We've seen a number of policies released, and the UK government has ambition to harness the opportunities that technology provides to help grow the economy and reform public services. The government is pro artificial intelligence. And digital and how we use data is really the only lever sort of left available to the sector to respond to the challenges that we have of increasing demand, changing expectations and reducing budgets. Earlier in the year, we released the State of Digital Local Government, which captured some of the challenges for the sector. And one of those was the urgent need to address digital skills and capabilities across the sector, which is impacting on the ability for councils to rethink and modernise service delivery. Local government has the lowest proportion of digital and data professionals in the workforce, 2%, and the ambition in central government is that should be like a 10% figure in central government. 2/3 of councils reported significant difficulty in recruiting to the posts of technical, operational and architectural officers. The most challenging specialist area for permanent recruitment was applications and systems officers, around 52%, followed by cyber officers, 42%. So you can see there's quite a range there where we're having challenges, including in our data capability survey, which identified just over half of councils are having challenges with data roles, recruitment and retention. There's no one single answer to how we solve this sort of challenge. And so we're trying to do a number of pieces of work, including we've got a national recruitment campaign that is going to be happening in January, and we're hoping to feature DDAT roles within that. And Welna, who leads on the workforce strategy work, we're going to be doing a piece of work with the workforce team next year about how we use workforce strategy to help embed some of the skills work that we're doing. So a bit of context to our CDDAT capability framework. This is a link in the deck, so you should be able to access that. But in 2024, to really help with the skills part of the challenge, the LGA CDT team launched the framework, and it really tries to identify the skills needed for that modern digital council. And it was co-created with the sector. So 74 heads of service were involved, we had like workshops with practitioners. And we wanted to provide a tool that was really straightforward and flexible, whether that you're trying to build capability in-house or commission it externally to bring in expertise to kind of reflect the different size and needs of councils. And we know that people are using the framework to help with workforce planning and to help them think about the jobs and the skills that they need. And we know that GDS have a capability framework, and so we've made sure that ours does align and complement that. But theirs obviously looks more about the roles, and we don't always have the opportunity to have all the vast amount of roles that central government have available to them. We are doing work in the new year to add levels into the framework to make it even more useful for the sector. So at the moment, you've got a spreadsheet on the website which has all the skills listed, but what we want to do is add sort of different competencies levels, and so that we can start to build career pathways and learning pathways to make it even more useful. And we've been talking to, Welna has a workforce network, and we've been talking to other networks about, learning from councils that are starting to use the framework and taking that learning and thinking how we can help provide more tools and resources for the sector to help, really be able to take advantage of the framework that we have. So just going to hand across to Welna to talk a little bit about that workforce planning work.
Thank you, Lisa. So let me just see if I can take control. There we go. So the first thing that I want to say is this is the box standard methodology that you probably will find in any of the documentation that you've come across before, from the CIPD, the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, to other organizations. What we've just done is really just take it down into 5 key steps, and I'm just going to briefly take you through these 5 key steps, sort of in a graphic way, for those people who are really visual. So you're going to see some nice visuals coming. So the first thing you need to do is thinking about your alignment. How are you going to do this? Is this going to be organizational down? Are you going to start at the top? Think about the corporate strategy. Think about where the organization needs to go. Or are you going to build your workforce plan and your process from the service level up? Usually it's a combination of the two, but most of the times organization starts with service level up, because then the organizational down will get really informed, and you'll find all that strategic information. What does the services need? Where's the particular needs? Where's the hotspots? Where's the big turnovers, etc. So service level up is usually the one that we would promote and say that will work really well, because then your overarching corporate workforce plan will be really informed. This is the process then to start to think about your environment. And usually people use PESTLE. For you familiar with PESTLE, you don't need any introduction to that. But for those not familiar with PESTLE, PESTLE stands for political, environmental, legal, technological, and social. And we've got economical as well. So we've got, in terms of that, you marry it up in terms of the SWOT. The SWOT is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I've given you an example here on the right-hand side, because here on the right-hand side, you'll see that, let's say we've got the PESTLE factors, technological, and maybe in that sense, you were thinking about AI adoption, and that could be, across the organization in particular. So then you marry that up with the SWOT, and you say, okay, so what is our organization or our service strength in terms of AI adoption? What's the weakness? What is the opportunities, and what are the threats? So the related SWOT insight that I just used as an example here is, for example, low digital confidence. So that might exist in terms of AI adoption across the organization. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, okay, so what is the workforce implication in terms of this? Well, there will be then definitely a need for targeted digital skills training. So you will marry them up, you will go through the PESTLE, you will find all your factors that links to that, you push it through the filter of the SWOT, and you will find what is your environment in that sense. Where do you, what is that environment that you operate in, and what is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? This slide sort of gives you then the idea of in terms of assessing your current state. So how does the current workforce look like? And there's a variety of things that you can use. I've just listed quite just a few. There's plenty more really. But for example, you can do some skills mapping, looking at your regulatory and compliance or your current skills and competency levels, or even the learning development participation across the service or across the organization. The other bit that you can explore is, for example, talent analytics. How does the performance metrics look like? Have you got some rising stars? Do they actually translate into promotion posts? How does your leadership development look like? And this carries through in terms of junior, middle, and senior top team development, not just necessarily top team or middle. We always sometimes forget our junior managers, and they need as much support as anybody else. What is the internal mobility rate, and what's the skills readiness across the organization or across the service in particular? Thinking about succession planning, you can do a critical roles assessment. What is those critical roles that needs filling at all given times that might make the service or the organization fall over if they're not filled? What is the readiness state of those? What is the succession risk index? Meaning, how quickly is that particular person going to leave or planning to leave? So somebody might have set, but listen, I'm actually planning to go into semi-retirement. Then you need to start to plan around that. And have you got any planning in place? What is the internal promotion rate of internal candidates? What's the turnover rates of particular roles within the organization? How does your pool of candidates look like? Are they diverse? Are they coming from a variety of backgrounds? And what is the time to fill those critical roles? How long does it actually take? Is it quick or is it longer? Workforce data. No introduction there, but you can think about demographics, you can think about age, you can think about diversity. What's the generational differences? Because that motivates and keep people with you at different various times, because it motivates people, from various ages. And what is the agency numbers, across the organization, in terms of, for, let's say, environmental health or your DDA teams, etc. In terms of headcount and full-time equivalent, how does that look like? Have you got all the posts filled? Are there quite a lot of vacancies, etc.? So the next one that I just want to go through is your is the future workforce assessment. So now that you know where you are, you need to start to think about your capability and capacity needs of the future. And this is when you start to think about, and again, this is not a complete list, but it's just a few to make you think, a bit of prompts there. So capability, is it skills, knowledge, experience you're thinking about, or in terms of capacities and numbers of posts, how many of a particular role do you need? And does that role going to change over time? Is that going to look the same as it is today in 2026, 2027, 2028, for example? So various things for you to think about in terms of your future workforce assessment. Now that you understood your environment, you think about your where you are, you've done your future needs assessment, you're going to look at your gaps. So the gap assessment timeline is really crucial. So you get 3 types of workforce planning, and resource planning is the first one. Because we are imminent for 2026, I say 2027 is going to be your resource planning year. That is when you make sure that you've got people in post, sort of bumps on seats planning. Then you're going to work around to the next financial year, which is 2028. That's something we called operational workforce planning. And then in terms of 2028, we talk, that's a spelling mistake, that needs to be 2029. We talk about strategic workforce planning. This is really where we want everybody to be, because we don't want to get to 2029 and then we are thinking, okay, but we are in the same state as where we were in 2026. We really want that 3-year plan, that strategic plan on the table, so people can start to plan now for the next 3 years. So very much in terms of action planning, now that you've assessed where you're going to be, you can use some of these strategies. This is not an exhaustive list again, and you'll see that it gets repeated across the 3 years. But you can think about recruitment and attraction opportunities. You know, can you recruit from particular places? Can you go to universities? What about learning development? Have you got your learning and development targeted towards roles that you think need succession planning? What about retention and engagement? Is there people that you need to retain in post for longer? What about succession planning? You know, have you got those roles covered in the 3 years? The final one here is very much in terms of execution. This is a really important step, but this is about delivery of that plan. You need to start to think about governance. You know, how are you going to govern that plan? Is the chief exec on board? Is the top team on board? Is the chief exec going to lead that ambassador role for the organization? What about the board itself? Have you got a workforce board, for example, who draws from all the services? And then is your heads of services on board as well? Managers' accountability levels need to be stipulated. Who's going to take accountability for some of the actions in the plan? And then in terms of sustainability, we talk about learning development programs, we talk about transformation programs. You know, are your workforce needs and your actions that you've planned around those needs embedded within your learning development programs or your transformation program itself? So really important things that you need to have in your plan. And then finally, after 12 months, you cannot have a static plan. Your plan needs to be dynamic, because you will need after 12 months, do a reassessment of your workforce needs, do a reassessment of the future workforce needs. You will need to go through a renewal of your plan and then do a reset. Make sure that that document stays a living document, because static plans don't work. Spare thought for organizations who had workforce plans in place, static plans prior to the COVID pandemic, you know, that just didn't want to work. You can't, you know, thinking about how everything moves on at the moment, it's really important that we get those dynamic plans in place. Over to Lisa.
Anna, if you just skip forward a couple for me to the data hub slide, that would be amazing. I've just popped a question in the chat. If you just go forward another couple until we get to the data one. Brilliant. Next one. I put a question in the chat if people can answer that. But really, I just wanted to just finish by promoting really the government digital and data hub that's recently been released. There are over 200 learning pathways for differing careers and roles, including data roles, and at the moment they're doing free certification until the end of December. They tend to do it every autumn, so hopefully the same will apply for next year, but you can do the learning pathways regardless. It's just the certification that it becomes free at this time of year. And I know Kate's been promoting as well the latest sort of data science accelerator program, so we're starting to be able to kind of use what's available to central government to support local government, which is amazing. And then we've got a last slide in the deck which has just got some links in for you to follow up on any of the bits and pieces that we've said today.
Something Wonderful. I can just highlight,
yeah.
which I forgot, is just put a link in the chat for the brand new, recently released Workforce Strategy and Action Plan for CDAT, which was designed by councils for councils over the last couple of years. So the link is in the chat. Please go and have a look. There's loads of information there. Thank you.
Amazing. Good shout. Brilliant. Thanks so much, Welna. And Mark, should we hand back to you?
Thanks ever so much both for that. That was really interesting to see workforce planning broken down into 5 clear steps. Really interesting to see that central government resources are being opened up to local good government as well, which is absolutely fascinating to hear. We do have some questions coming in as well, so if you don't mind sticking around to the end just to help us out for some Q&A. Thank you very much. Our next presenter today joins us from the London Office of Technology and Innovation, and they are here to share some of the work happening across Greater London, including the Pan-London Analytical Capability Framework. It's a pleasure this afternoon to welcome Anna Humpleby, who is the Data Projects Manager from LOTI. They were previously at Richmond and Wandsworth Councils, leading on the delivery of the organisation's data strategy, policies, projects, working to advance the understanding use of data analytics across council services. So it's a huge honour to be with you today. So please give a huge welcome to Anna. Over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Another very kind introduction. Yeah, really nice to be here today and speak to all of you, and hopefully you can all see my slides. So yeah, as Mark said, I'm Anna from LOTI. Just going to start with a brief bit of kind of introduction and background, and then speak to you specifically about a capability framework that we've developed for London, specifically looking at analysts or kind of similar roles that are spending kind of lots of their time on data and analytical work. So just to start with, for anyone that might not be familiar with LOTI, we're a local government organisation based in London. We have got a membership of 28 London boroughs, the GLA and London councils, and we essentially exist to support London boroughs to collaborate around kind of data, tech, innovation, and look at kind of solving some of those big challenges that London is facing, and doing things as London rather than as individual boroughs. We very much take an outcomes-driven approach to our work. So whilst we obviously talk a lot about data and tech and do a lot of those types of projects, we are not kind of using those as our starting point, but what are the kind of outcomes that we want to see and deliver for Londoners? So what are those kind of real-world changes? And then bringing kind of expertise in people, tech, data, and innovation methods to those. This next slide just gives you a bit more detail about what each of those areas entails, but for the purposes of today, yeah, obviously largely focusing on that people quadrant. So just a little bit of context, and I'm sure lots of you on the call will know this already, but from our kind of London and local government perspective, why it's so essential that we have these analytical skills. So yeah, in London and across the country, as local government, we really have that commitment to deliver effective services to our residents, to kind of support communities to thrive. And to achieve that, we really need to make use of that kind of full suite of tools that are available to us. And data and information is one of those really important ones. We also know that there are lots of kind of big challenges we're facing at the moment in local government, from, you know, kind of demands on adult social care, homelessness, net zero, all of these things which are really quite complex. And that's where kind of really being able to look at the data, to understand the data, and kind of use that data to inform action is really important. And in that context, we need to make sure that local authorities are really equipped with the kind of analytical skills to be able to do that work. I think just a little bit more on why it's important to have those skills and kind of what it can help us do in terms of those kind of key things that we want to deliver as local government. So using data to actually kind of drive actionable insights that can help us design and deliver better public services. So using those insights for decision making, for resource allocation, and kind of measuring the effectiveness of services as well. Secondly, policy making. So really making sure that those policy decisions are based on evidence and based on kind of knowing what works and what doesn't work. Thirdly, enhancing innovation. So looking at what those kind of opportunities and challenges are that we're facing, and how do we develop new innovative solutions, products and services to those. Fourthly, increasing knowledge and access. So actually, you know, making data available about London, its places, its people. And finally, but really importantly, really being able to build that public trust. So demonstrating that as local government, we're being kind of accountable and transparent in our decision-making processes. So with all that in mind, one of the pieces of work that we developed, I think at the beginning of this year, is our Pan-London Analytical Capability Framework. I've put a QR code on the screen there, which you should be able to use if you want to have a little look at it whilst I'm speaking, and I can post the link in the chat afterwards as well. But this framework has been developed in collaboration with our London boroughs that we work with, and specifically within our data leaders network. So looking at those kind of heads of data type roles across the boroughs, and also inspired by a framework that Westminster City Council had developed. And there was real kind of consensus among the group that it would be helpful to have something at that London level. So, so that's what we did. It's at its core is about kind of outlining what that foundational set of skills that are required for an analytical role. So an analyst or whatever their kind of job title might be, but someone that might spend, 50% or more of their time kind of doing data and analysis. We also wanted to use this as an opportunity to really develop more of a shared understanding across London local government and really help to build up that analyst profession as a really kind of accepted and respected profession across London and specifically in local government. And also kind of having something that can support employees with their own career progression, as well as being able to kind of bring in and retain analytical talent. So just a bit more on the kind of details of the framework. So it's kind of broken down into 3 competency levels. So level 1, looking at more kind of junior roles. Level 2, slightly more complex, maybe those roles that have got more kind of project responsibilities. And then level 3, looking at that more kind of advanced analytical work and maybe some analytical leadership roles. So we've got kind of 3 sections in the framework which cover technical skills, analytical competencies and general competencies. And for each of the competencies outlined, it is broken down into that level 1, level 2, level 3. So there's a clear breakdown and also a clear view of kind of how to progress through those levels as well. In terms of kind of who is this for, so obviously analysts themselves who might be considering their own kind of skills development, career planning, and kind of looking at what it is that they need to have in their role. Also quite helpful for line managers that might want to kind of have a view of what types of skills they have in their team already or what type of skills they might need to bring into their team, and also supporting those individuals that they manage with their own development. Hiring managers, so kind of looking at creating consistent job descriptions. This can be quite a useful tool for that, as well as supporting with the shortlisting and interview process. And then also just kind of having that information out there for anyone who kind of is interested in learning more about what it means to work as an analyst in local government, what they do, why those skills are important, and what kind of specific skills are required. So I touched on this a little bit, but just to give a bit more of a flavour of kind of what the framework is being used for, I think probably the most significant use is around informing job description and person specs when looking at recruitment. So having a framework to follow, having a really foundational set of skills that need to be part of those roles when looking at recruiting new people into the organisation. And also helped us at LOTI to kind of inform some of our example job descriptions that we've developed for some of these types of roles as well. Performance management, so kind of helping define what those standards of performance are, and what kind of skills or training might be required for different roles. I mentioned kind of already, but yeah, really helping with individuals' own kind of training and development plans, seeking out opportunities for where they might want to kind of progress through their career and what additional skills might need to be developed. And finally, organisational development. So also supporting that kind of part of local government to look at, what training courses might need to be offered, or kind of how to support individuals within the organisation. So that is just a kind of small flavour of the framework. As I mentioned, I will post the link in the chat for you to have a bit more of a detailed look at. And just in the last sort of minute, I just wanted to shout out a couple of other things that LOTI is doing in terms of skills, talent, recruitment. Hopefully, I think you should be getting a copy of these slides so you can kind of take a look at these resources in more detail. But we've been doing a lot of work on this recently, from kind of writing blogs to help candidates that might be applying for these types of jobs in local government, developing our own job description libraries. We've got a database of kind of DDAT roles, as well as exemplar job descriptions to help our boroughs with writing those and not having to do it for the first time each time. We've also done a series of LOTI Talks data videos to really try and showcase to people what it's like to work in data in London local government and try and attract people into this as a career opportunity. And then we've also kind of been doing our own bits of training. And finally, we have a jobs board on the LOTI website just to kind of promote those job opportunities in London local government. So yeah, I encourage you to take a look at our website and take a look at some of these links after the session. But otherwise, I will leave it there, and thank you so much for listening. And yeah, we'll pick up any questions in the chat or at the end.
Thanks ever so much for that, Anna. Absolutely wonderful. It was really amazing to hear some of the real practical steps that councils can undertake along with the benefits this is bringing. And there was a lot of tools and resources there. So councils really aren't starting with a blank page. It helps to bring that discussion with the table. So thank you ever so much. We do have quite a lot of questions coming in as well. And if please, everyone, please do continue to keep putting your questions in as well. And we will get through them to the end. Our next speaker, though, today joins us from Manchester City Council, and today they are here to share the challenges, the benefits, and key practical steps with regards to data talent. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Tim Robinson, who is the Performance and Insight Lead at Manchester City Council. They bring with them today a huge wealth of expertise leading on performance, research, and intelligence. So please give a huge warm welcome to Tim. Over to you.
Thanks, Mark. I'll just do the screen share thing. Very frightening that the share button is right next to one marked end event. So if the show suddenly stops, you know who to blame. There we go. And if someone could just confirm that they can see my slides full screen. I'll take that as a yes. I've got a thumb. Great. Okay. So my name is I am Tim Robinson. I've worked at Manchester City Council for 31 years, since 1994, so possibly before some of you were born. Never mind started your careers in local government. I've never really found anywhere better to work, obviously. So I started in essentially in a research type of role. So I've got, always worked in this sort of data researchy type of role, albeit a lot more analog back in the 90s. I think there was one computer with Windows 3.1 on it, if anybody remembers that. And we didn't have Microsoft Office. We didn't have spreadsheets even. So I've seen it go from that very analog, faxing data around on paper and doing lots of photocopying to what we are today. And we're still on that long journey of transformation. And it's interesting to hear, experiences from others who are also on that journey. So I currently sit within we do have a centralized team here, which I know not everybody has within their organizations, but we still retain a center of excellence that's called Performance, Research and Intelligence. So we have all our kind of data analysts, research staff, our people that do lots of data and produce sort of help support evidence-based decision making all in one single team. And that's our mission statement there, which I won't read out, but that's effectively, if you look at my service plan, that is what we're all about. We're helping to shape our sort of strategic and operational thinking. And Manchester has continued and to be a very much an evidence-led city in terms of its decision making. So we've kind of retained that centralized function. So our operating model, and some of you may have something similar, or you may have this more sort of dispersed model. So this is kind of where we're at right now, albeit, discussion there about sort of the DDAT, and we're sort of early on our journey in terms of reflecting on what that means and how we might want to proceed in that sort of more modern DDAT kind of focused way. But what we've got right now is from where I came from, which was lots of people that did bits of data analysts or bits of research or bits of sort of data transactional work, sat in different teams working directly under different services. We brought those together a few years ago now into a sort of centre of excellence within one office, which is where I'm sat now. You might be able to hear some analysis going on in the background right now. And we basically structured our team around 3 themes, which is people, place, and the council. So essentially looking at those very, very broad thematic areas, and then actually the performance of the council itself. We do the kind of work that I'm sure some of you on the call will be familiar with, those kind of statutory data returns that take up a lot of our time. Obviously, we look at we support the council in terms of its own performance monitoring across every single council service. We also get involved in the hard work, the really hard work of dealing with some of those transactional issues like address management, the flow of data in from our schools, and all the data quality issues that come with that. But also research and evidence and insight, which doesn't always sit side by side with our type of those kind of data structures, but we've got that all under one roof. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of having that all together. Obviously, those benefits are that we can pool all that knowledge and that resource and skill in one team. It can be also really agile. So, things change rapidly in local government, as I'm sure you all know, and we can deploy bespoke bits of analysis and research where we need it, when we need it, by having all that expertise kind of together and kind of overlapping and communicating with each other and sharing their skills. So we've got people that are really good at sort of doing that kind of more data-driven stuff, but also people that have that research background, but also people who can do things like GIS mapping, people who are good at visualizing data and bringing it to life, which is really helpful across a large organization, and also doing some of that more deep dive work. And we're also got really good relationships with academia. So obviously we've got universities in our city, we've got that benefit, and we make good use of the fact that they are there, and there's a lot of crosstalk between us in terms of how we can support, how they can support us as well, being a data-driven, evidence-led council. So I guess not everybody's got access to all that kind of stuff in their own local authority. So obviously, we're this place the size of Manchester, we really make the best out of having all that on our doorstep. So just a bit about some of the things that we do to kind of attract the kind of skills that we need at Manchester, and also to deal with the fact that making sure people stay and have a good career when they come here, particularly if they're in a data type role. So we've got lots of different things that we do, and I'm sure colleagues on the call will do similar. So we have placements for school leavers. We have work as well as like that more traditional work experience, unpaid and paid, to give people a real world chance to see what it's actually like working in local government. Often people are quite surprised by the breadth and how interesting the stuff that we do is. Make it look really interesting and exciting for some of our school placements. We also have again, similar to what I'm sure many of you have, we have a graduate trainee scheme, which brings for local residents or people who've graduated from our universities, and they will do placements across the council, working in different teams for a period for several months at a time. And if they're interested and they want to have a go at doing a more sort of data-driven or analytical type of career, they can come and spend a few months with us. And I've got a nice quote from somebody who's done similar and has now settled into that type of career. So that's a really kind of fantastic scheme that attracts amazing talent into the council. We also have we sometimes do supported internships specifically for people with special educational needs and or neurodiversity, who can do a sort of supported placement where they get a mix of that real sort of close support and also time in the office, working in a busy office environment and adapting to that and sort of develop, supporting their development in terms of their future careers as well. And also we go out to our universities and colleges, and that's a real picture of me boring some people at university, telling them how exciting it is to work at the council in a data role. And who knows, the future members of staff might well be sat in that room. Just go on to the next slide. So that's just a quote. I've tried to bring some quotes in from some of my colleagues in here. So this is Kai, who's telling us about the fact that he went on that graduate trainee scheme, and he maybe didn't know if he wanted a sort of research data type role. It wasn't something he'd got a lot of experience and competency in prior to that. But having done those 8 months with us and understanding how impactful the work that we do, those evidence-based decision making is, he's settled into a research team at the council, which sits alongside my team. So that was a really good outcome for him, and he's got a kind of a career he perhaps didn't expect to have. And talk about I know you said rising stars earlier, and there's a real rising star if I ever saw one. Another thing we do, which is brilliant, which again, some of you may have similar schemes within your boroughs, is what's called the Q-Step Data Fellowship. And this is run by our University of Manchester. And it's quite an unusual scheme. It's aimed at undergraduates, so people who are midway through their university career. They do a paid internship during the summer break, which is great for the student because they've got paid work, and also they get to come into our space and develop their quantitative data skills. So the emphasis there is on quant rather than qual skills. And we've had some absolutely brilliant people come through that scheme who've really enriched our service and brought some great ideas and talent to the team. And there's a great quote, and at least one person is now settled into a full-time role. We've only just been doing this for the past 2 or 3 years. And I've got a quote from Fred there. Fred's brilliant. He was one of our recent data fellowship students, and he absolutely loved working for us. He couldn't believe how the breadth and depth of what we do. And he talks about how he's developed his presentation of people skills, analytical report writing, and he sort of really feels that he's got skilled up for when he leaves university and enters the real world. And he was super inspired by what he saw here, and hopefully he'll either come back to us or he'll have a fantastic career ahead of him, probably in a sort of data local government type role. So that was a really productive scheme, and definitely happy to share more information about how that works. We also have, and again, I'm not bragging here, but we've got another real fantastic string to our bow at the moment, which is we've got this 5-year health determinants research collaboration here at Manchester. Others on the call may have similar. There's a few of these schemes in operation around the local authority sector. It's funded by the NIHR, which I've forgotten the acronym for, but I'll look it up. And that is effectively a research collaboration that we're doing, which focuses on making local authorities more research active and embedding a culture of evidence-based decision making. And this is a huge program that sits within our sort of as a service within a service, if you like. So the staff who have been recruited to this project sit within our team, and what they're looking at is working with local residents groups, working with the voluntary community sector, and bringing those research skills into the authority, but also into our neighbourhoods and our communities. So going beyond the data or what the clever things you can do with AI, actually getting out into our communities and doing that place-based work, including some researchers in residence and doing that kind of ethnographic research where they can really get a sense of what is actually happening out in our neighbourhoods. So if you look at the indices of deprivation, although we are outperforming in some ways economically as a city, we are still the 4th most deprived local authority, and I think the 2nd or 1st most deprived metropolitan borough. So we've got a long way to go in terms of making our city fairer and addressing inequality. And this research collaboration really speaks to that priority. And the fantastic thing about it is those people with those skills sit right next to our team. So we've now got people coming into the team who've got that kind of research and academic background. And I don't know, and I haven't really seen this mentioned in some of the DDAT frameworks, but I strongly feel that there's a real benefit to having those kind of research staff sat alongside people with that more kind of technical, very sort of local government, old school kind of focus, like what I've got, working alongside us. And they bring different perspectives, they bring different skills, they bring a different type of thinking. And I see this in every day within my team now. We've got people that can spark and inspire people who might, otherwise be just sat doing dashboards or wading through data quality issues, because they've got that totally different industry or academic background. So I've got a quote there from one of my new colleagues who's come in through that HDRC process, and they didn't know that councils did research. And they didn't quite know what to expect, and she's talking about how, as for her, as somebody with a research background, how exciting it is to be in a space where you can actually see or start to see the immediate effects of what we do, and how that might impact on people now or in a couple of years' time, rather than doing that very kind of long-term research that you might never see the benefits of until you retire. So that's a real exciting perspective for me. I know Mark mentioned earlier about challenges to some of this thing, so it's not all, I'm not painting too rosy a picture here. We have a lot of issues that we have to deal with as a council, and I'm sure these are familiar to many of you local authority colleagues on the call. We have a massive legacy of data quality issues, good old-fashioned duplicate records that conflict in our systems. Which one's the right one? Who knows? Who can make the decision on that stuff? We've got a long history, which I've seen happen in real time because I've been here forever, of legacy business systems, old databases that are out of service, people putting manual fixes in that have become kind of embedded. So someone's got a spreadsheet that's business critical that doesn't work or breaks because they don't know how it was built. We've got people being very reliant on things like business objects or reports in SQL that are patching holes, if you like, in transactional systems that people have bought and invested in, that we are then asked to unpick and fix because we're the data people. Another challenge we've got, and I'm sure this isn't unusual for everyone, is that we've got people coming into the organisation who've got skills in coding. They've got R, they've got Python, they've got AI stuff that I've probably never heard of yet. And with those present some information security challenges. So we're not IT, our IT team sits separately. That may change under a sort of more of a DDAT way of working in the future. But obviously they don't want us to start using tools that might compromise security in some way or accidentally push data out online that shouldn't be there. So there's always a challenge there in terms of getting that mutual understanding there. And at a more simple level, I've got people coming in who have fantastic data science and coding skills, but then I'm sitting down in front of some legacy work that they've got to try and unpick that was built with lots of Excel formulas. And somebody said to me the other day, it's like I learned how to drive on an automatic car. Now you're giving me like one with a manual gearbox to drive. So it's that kind of skill set of working with an old-fashioned user interface when you probably know what's going on under the bonnet, but they've actually got to go on YouTube and learn how to do Excel formulas and things like that. I'm sure that's not an unusual story for colleagues. And it's now how to, a lot of what we're doing at the minute is then how to turn some of those old processes that have got as a legacy into something more efficient and replicable. And that is a function for our team, but not necessarily the best use of everyone's time. The other thing we do, which I think is really important, is going beyond attracting staff into the service, is how to retain that talent. If we can't necessarily pay the market rate for some of these skills, but I think we don't underestimate at all how important it is to create that environment where this talent can thrive. And so we do an awful lot of put a lot of effort into making this the most inclusive and diverse workforce we can have, and making it a great place to live and work. So there's some examples of some of the things we try and do there, which is just making that time for that continuous learning and development, either informally or formally. We do exchange afternoons, which are all about skill sharing, about learning about new things from each other, but also personal reflections and supporting each other in those more softer skills ways, and sort of focusing on well-being, which is so important. Also innovation and being able to try new things is embedded in our strategy as a council. So there's a link there to the Our Manchester strategy. I'm sure you've all got one similar. And ours has got that sentence in it: we own it and are not afraid to try new things. And that gives people in my team a real mandate to do exactly that, and not be afraid to be innovative, to bring new ideas into it, and not wait to be, not wait to be asked to do it. They can be proactive. We've got other things like staff groups for different groups. So young staff group, we've got a neurodiversity group, disabled staff network, the list goes on. And also we've got things like mentoring schemes, which work in both directions. So you can mentor or be mentored and from above and below. So those are fantastic opportunities that we have at Manchester. And just last but not least is trying to keep it interesting, and that's what I'm striving to do all the time with my team. And I've got people in my service, and the one thing that unites them all is that they are passionate about our city. There's our city picture of it right there, and they get to see the impact of what they do on a daily basis. And there's a great quote there from Gareth, who says he loves his job, which is great. I didn't tell him to say that. He offered that voluntarily. And he talks about how the role allows him to apply his technical skills, but also get involved in project management and stakeholder engagement, which are not things that he's had exposure to in a previous role. And he feels that reward of seeing how the work that he does actually has some meaning and has some tangible benefits in Manchester. So that's a great quote that I think really sums up like what we try and make our team about, and what the kind of environment that we want to foster to support people who have that data talent that we really need in a modern local authority. Very last is just making a point there about the fact that we don't go it alone. We've got partnerships and relationships with lots of other organisations across the Northwest, either through our analysts network across Greater Manchester, or with our universities, and also as being part of a group like LARIA, which I have to mention because my boss is the current chair, which is a fantastic group for local area research and intelligence, working in partnership across the sector. So I don't know whether I've overrun or underrun, but I'll stop there and hand back to Mark. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks ever so much for that, Tim. It was really interesting to hear about the network opportunities open to analysts, as well as localized opportunities that you've got that could be replicated. And I'm sure there's people on the call who started off as junior analysts, yet ended up doing dev work in Microsoft Access with front ends, like a full stack dev. Yeah, it's really interesting how that all resonates there as well. Our final speaker today, though, joins us from the London Borough of Camden, and today they are here to share how they went from having 50% reduction in analytical staff to establishing a recruitment campaign and capabilities framework. They will also share the importance of investing in programming languages, as well as retaining data skills. So it's a huge honour today to welcome Edward Purchase, who is the Principal Data Analyst and has done some incredible things with data analytics, Python, and really helped champion data skills in local government. So please give a huge welcome to Edward, and over to you.
Great, thank you, Mark. And I think that was a much too kind an introduction. And I have also successfully started presenting without ending the event. So off to a good start. So Camden has been on quite a journey building data analytics capabilities over the last couple of years, and I can hopefully now give a swift run through of that in a way that's helpful for everyone in the audience. So I'm going to give a bit of context of that journey just to set things on a timeline. And then I'll talk you through our approach to developing a professional capability framework for our data analysts. I'm going to show you what our structure for data analysts looks like. It's a little bit unusual, so I'll explain some of the nuance. Explain our approach to recruitment and upskilling. Talk a bit about the work that we've done to build communities of practice, and then talk a little on investment and cost benefit. So first of all, the journey. And it starts from a challenging, in some ways painful place. So we did, looking all the way back to 2021, 2022, we did invest in the skills of our information officers then. We started in an experimental way to start with, and then increasingly systematically work with Python applications, skilled people up in machine learning, various other tools and technologies. And over the course of 2022, lost around half of our data analysts. And it was a red flashing light sort of situation of regulatory returns falling over. But it's often the case things have to break a little bit before they're properly fixed. And we did fix it. So the point in time that I generally understand as being Camden as an organisation comprehensively investing in data analytics is in September 2022, when we appointed our first chief data officer. So that was the first role that was an individual with a technical skill set in data analytics in our senior leadership team. Shortly after that, they wrote and owned and shared around the organization a data strategy for the organization that had 6 themes. I've pulled out the headline of the most important theme for our conversation today, which is fostering data professions, leadership and capabilities. And I won't read the full blurb there, but that's there for you. Shortly after that, December 2022, we developed a professional framework. I'll talk more about it in a little bit, but it's essentially a Camdenized DDAT for data analysts. Through 2023-24, we did a lot of recruitment of new staff into the organisation and upskilling of current staff. In total is around 8 recruitment campaigns to around 30 posts, thousands of applications that I read, and hundreds of interviews. So it was quite a comprehensive piece of body of work over that time period. This year, 2025, we've been more focused on consolidation, so developing our business processes, getting set up in Jira as project management tool, using Confluence as a knowledge base, consolidating our use of R and Python, Azure services, version control and Git. So we've been systematizing our version control, and starting to develop our CI/CD data ops processes, and then looking ahead, we are keen to expand the model further and adapt as the business changes, restructures, business needs change, and as the technology environment changes, we're improving the extent to which we are professional software engineers. We're increasing our AI engineering capabilities as those become more available and more useful in various different business cases. So our professional framework, the Camdenized DDAT, now rebranded, but DDAT is more catchy than GoodAd, I think now. So the innovations and the Camdenizing, we introduced an additional layer of seniority, the lead data analyst, which exists at essentially directorate level. So we have 3 of those, one principal, which is me, and then senior data analysts exist, broadly speaking, and at the level of a service. So there'll be, for example, a senior data analyst for education, one for housing, one for property management, adult social care, children's social care, and so on. And that will scale based on the business appetite. It's a buy-in model, so that business area will want to invest in the model and then have the DDAT data analysts within our structure supporting them as customers. And then the number of data analysts under the management of each senior data analyst will depend on the need and the appetite of that business area. And then we have an entry level associate data analyst, 3 of them, one of which is a level 7 apprentice. And I've put the salary brackets there as well. Very conscious that the market you're positioning yourself in will be different up and down the country, but those are our current salary bands. We retained the 10 capability domains that are summarized there, but the full text is tweaked slightly. So there are references to governance structures that exist within Camden specifically and local government more broadly. We changed the data quality references a bit just to reflect the fact that local authorities generally versus central government have more ownership of the full data lifecycle. We design, procure the systems, we employ the staff who are data entrants and so on. And we tried to get little bits of data science into the statistical methods and the IT and mathematics capabilities. As a reflection, I would say that no framework is ever going to be perfect, especially when we're considering industries that are changing at quite a rapid rate. But the utility of having a framework comes out in its use, however slightly imperfect it might be. If it's good enough, it can be incredibly useful, and we'll use it in our job profiles. So the bulk of each of our job profiles is word for word the same, that chunk of the professional capabilities framework. Then we have a relationships section describing the part of the organization, the key customers and so on, and then a domain focus section which references specific legislation of that business area, specific strategies, and things like that. We use it to structure our interviews when we go up to interview. We use it for stakeholder engagement internally when we're adapting to a business area, negotiating roles and responsibilities. It's very useful to have that as a reference point to establish the appropriate, most useful professional boundaries with colleagues. Performance management of staff, learning and development, and of course progression. There's great utility to being on a shared professional framework in that there's a transparency to where the gaps are to be filled for an individual who wants to progress to more senior roles or sideways into other DDAP professions within the organisation or other organisations. So our structure, and there are 44 of us, good crowd. It's a little unusual in that it's, I suppose, semi-centralised. So we refer to it as a community of practice federated model, and we think it's an optimal midpoint between a single centralised data analytics team versus a lone analyst kind of model. It's connected through a combination of hard and matrix line management. Camden quite likes matrix management, particularly in more senior roles. And at the central point where myself as principal data analyst we sit alongside the other DDAP professions who are going through DDAP transition in a similar sort of way. So the data architects, the database administrators, data engineers, GIS specialists, data governance specialists, and that central hub, which as a team is DART, our data analytics and research team. We also have delivery resource there. So for elements of project management and delivery, that capacity is available for data analytics projects. So how did we grow this model? And it's important to stress that it's been through a combination of recruitment of new talent into the organization and the upskilling of existing staff in information officer type roles. So firstly, recruitment, and I'm going to talk as best I can about the broad approach we take into recruitment, the process, just the specifics of how that looks when someone applies to a data analyst position in Camden, and then what we've done to ensure equity and that we build a diverse workforce. So in terms of approach, we've certainly considered carefully our position in the market. So that's of course salary, but not exclusively salary, flexible working, development opportunities, culture. We've also tried to be as wide-reaching as possible, and we've recruited very strong data analysts from loads and loads of different industries from all over the place. Certainly lots from academia, little bits and pieces from other public sector organisations, some coming out of consultancy, some just any private company. We use LinkedIn quite a lot for promotion. We see good volume and quality of applications coming via LinkedIn promotion, and we have successfully used open house events. We tend to do that as standard now when we go out to recruit, and that's usually just after office hours, an hour's worth of half us talking about the role and then half any questions that anyone considering making an application wants to ask us. Myth busting has been quite an important part of that motion, and I think Tim mentioned it a little, but we often get potential candidates being surprised at the kind of work we do, and that it's as interesting as it is. Certainly local authorities are interesting organisations from the perspective of data, just because of the many very, very different lines of business yield very many different types of data. So we, as an organisation, will have tons of image data, tons of text data, lots of at times messy structured data, so that there is an appeal to that variety. Certainly data for good has been a a big part of the messaging that seems to have been responded to very well. And some of our best candidates will reference our data charter. So Camden has a data charter developed in collaboration with residents, which articulate our ethical responsibilities when processing data. Also very much along the lines of what Tim was just describing, there is an appeal to being an organisation that's large enough to have tooling to do cool, fun stuff, but small enough for an individual data analyst to be close to the human beings getting the benefit from good data analysis, and being able to program an AI application and then the next day go out to a children's centre or a school or a day centre and have that face-to-face contact with data subjects is an appeal. It's appealing to good candidates. In terms of our process, it's a 3-stage process, and as with much recruitment, it's a bit of a mixture of being rigorous enough to find the best candidate and being swift enough not to lose the best candidates. So we'll have an initial phone call which lasts 30 minutes, and that's usually one open-ended question along the lines of, why have you applied to the role, and please talk about your skills and experience relative to the 10 capability domain, something along those lines. But it's a kind of a framing question for a quick conversation. There's then a second shortlisting off the back of that, a technical test where we will send links to published open data from Camden sources and give a bit of a loose steer on exploratory data analysis. Candidates send back all their code. They usually do their work in R or Python. We'll review that. And then there's an in-person interview where we follow up on that technical test and then ask a series of questions, again, based on the 10 capability domains. In terms of ensuring equity, so we took advice on the language of our adverts to make them as accessible as possible. One big element of that is, and we were advised that in an industry that's more dominantly male, to consider language that encouraged applications from candidates that didn't feel they ticked all the boxes, and that would make the roles more accessible. Open house events, I do feel, make the roles much more accessible. Just the nature of them, come and ask us any questions, come and meet us. But also we have observed that really quite consistently, again, in a heavily male-dominated industry, that those tend to be around half and half, male and female, so more representative of a group that's underrepresented across the industry. We do blind shortlisting, so all the names, addresses, and so on is scrubbed out through the initial shortlisting phase, and we have diverse interview panels. So upskilling. So the second part of how that model has grown out is identifying current staff doing data type roles and supporting them through a transition from that previous role into a DDAT data analyst role. And the basic process is first a self-evaluation of that individual, looking at the professional framework, giving an account of all their skills and experience that they feel demonstrate those capabilities, and then most importantly, identifying where the gaps are. And those gaps become the basis for a bespoke professional development plan for that individual. And for each gap, there are a series of actions planned out, which are then owned between them and their manager that's mentoring them through the professional development plan. And the actions can be all kinds of things. So there's coaching around softer skills, presentation, communication, and so on. Certainly lots of coding courses with all kinds of different providers. I've chucked up a few that we've used over the years. They're probably familiar with most of them. Then also work allocation. Of course, the staff currently doing data type roles, can they be supported to skill up through just being given exposure to things that they wouldn't have otherwise been exposed to, give a presentation, although they may not have done previously, and so on. Then there are 3 monthly reviews a formal review to make sure they're on track, or in a scenario where it's not working, to end the arrangement. And then finally an assessment, and the assessment involves the candidate themselves, or the member of staff, putting together a portfolio. And I've got a few snippies from some of the portfolios there, and then presenting that to a management team. It's a fairly light touch assessment in that we'd hope that everyone would pass it, because if they weren't going to pass it, that would have been identified at one of the reviews, and either the arrangement extended or ended. But we felt it's important to have an end point to aim for, just to focus that learning journey. And the full process, as standard, lasts 12 months, but could be a bit shorter, could be a bit longer, depending on the individual. We have also used a couple of level 7 and level 6 apprenticeships, no more level 7s. So community building, and we emphasize community a lot, the community of data analysts, but then the wider community of data professionals, the engineers, the GIS specialists, and so on. And it's great for everyone to be buddies, but there is also a real business benefit to having that community model. So certainly flexing capacity, and if there's a crisis response situation, or an inspection, or just through staff turnover, a capacity gap, it makes it much easier to flex to fill those gaps. Naturally, you'll end up with technical specialisms. So we'll have data analysts that are expert in natural language processing or machine learning, computer vision, statistics, demography, and so on. And there's a benefit to the sharing of skills. If there's a computer vision expert within our place services, and there's a project that needs computer vision work done in a completely different business area, that specialist is on hand and already connected to the individuals leading that project. It facilitates collaborative working, and we are getting more and more opportunities for insight, asks for insight and analysis, which require synthesis of data from across many different parts of the organization, or external data sources. So it might be adults and children's social care to look at transitions, adult social care and property to look at features of property alongside social care need within the care package. There's evaluation of a pregnancy voucher scheme recently, where our early years data analyst team and our depth French and data analyst team work closely together. So there are lots and lots of opportunities I'm sure officers on the call from local authorities will be familiar with. In terms of the activity and what we do as a community, so there's the shared business processes, shared environments, shared tooling. So I mentioned previously, we use the same GitHub repo conventions, we use the same Jira project management conventions, so can pass work between one another effectively, and we share Confluence spaces as a shared knowledge base. We have share and learn activities, some kind of formal sessions, some less formal lunch and learn sort of things. And we had a festival over the summer. So we had a big data festival where we had marketplace stalls. We had lots of talks that were, some of them open to the public, some just internal. We had lots of community type workshops. And the next theme here is the outward facing, and it's the community engagement this year over the summer. That's been really nice to see, where we've built up a professional community within the organisation, starting to do more outward facing things. So we had a public women in data event over the summer. There was some data analysts went out to some of our Camden schools and had some sessions with the school pupils to teach them about data and storytelling with data. We had a career support workshop where residents were interested in a career in data were invited in to workshop their CVs and ask any questions that they had of Camden data professionals. And we had an adult social care talks data event where social workers, data analysts hosted a session with people drawing on care to give some examples of the data that they gathered from the data subjects and the people drawing on care, how it's used. There was an example of ad hoc analysis on falls rates, and then how that's used in decision making to inform service delivery. and that transparency and support to data literacy and understanding individuals as data entities and how the system relates to them, I think is important and good work to be doing. Certainly academia, and we're lucky to be based in the Knowledge Quarter. We've had at least one paper published from the work of the data analysts in the organisation this year, and there's lots of less formal kind of interactions with contacts across academia, and certainly professional forums. So the LOTI groups, and there's a couple of different LOTI groups. The AI community group is very good. GLA events, certainly, not mention that. So finally, investment and cost benefit. And one important point to stress is where you can see a lot of people all at once, you can assume that costs a huge amount of money, and it does, but I am confident that it's a much leaner model than what tends to exist otherwise. And if you can have a team of 3 data analysts automating data processing that would otherwise be picked up in 10 officers worth of time, do it faster, more effectively, and have the additional skills for insights, developing AI applications, then you have a cheaper model delivering far more. To reiterate the point that it is a buy-in model, and I think that's been important for how we've grown. I think data analytics isn't something you can do to a business area. It's something you have to do with them, and if you don't have the buy-in, it's probably best to wait until the maturing of that business area invites that in and is invested in it. The slide is just a snippy from a slide pack I used a little while ago for senior leadership, and that gives an account of all the various benefits, automation, cost saving, evidence-based decision making, bits around culture of transparency and accountability. Data analytics can be a good catalyst for culture change, as well as representation and targeting. I am almost certain I've gone well over, so sorry, Mark. And just as a final reflection, that building a community of skilled and passionate data analysts has been one of the greatest privileges of my career so far. So I'd certainly encourage anyone on the call who does have the opportunity to do anything along those lines to pick it up and run with it, because it's a very rewarding thing to do. And I think we are now going to questions for not just me, for all presenters.
Thanks ever so much for that, Edward. That was absolutely fascinating. It's wonderful to hear about the community building. It's great to see how the pathways were all set out as well. It was nice just to visualise the journey for councils from start to finish, and I'm sure there's a lot of people on this call which can take a lot away on this. I'd like to invite all our presenters back now, if that's okay. We do have some time to go through some of these questions that the audience have been asking. We've attempted to chunk them up as much as we can. We'll try and get through as many as we can, and we'll start off by focusing on some of the more skills, recruitment and resource and retention questions first of all, and then whatever we got left we can jump in. So the first question we have is, what more specialist AI support / training are organisations giving to data analysts beyond the usual corporate intro and co-pilot and prompt engineering?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, sure. So what more specialist AI support and training are organisations giving to data analysts beyond the usual corporate intro to co-pilot and prompt engineering?
I can talk to that. So I did flash some of them up on one of the slides, but the Hugging Face has some good learning modules for things like model context protocol, large language models. We also use Deep Learning AI, has lots of videos, and Data Camp has quite a lot. But it's something for a data analyst. It's essentially interacting with large language models within a Python environment. So there's obviously elements of prompting because you still have the prompt completion paradigm, but it's a bit different from using a chatbot interface. But it's so great that the tools we're using are predominantly open source, and there's lots of really freely available tutorial material. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you.
Tim might want to jump in.
I can't compete with that, Ed. So yeah, we're very early, I'll be honest, at Manchester in our journey on that, on all the AI type stuff. I think I've got people who are actively engaging with, because we encourage people to innovate in practice and bringing some of those skills into the team. At the moment, we don't have any specific training at the moment. We're very much using that wall garden that Microsoft 365 gives you with their in-house thing, and we're really conscious of these sort of guardrails and security aspects of some of that stuff as well. So yeah, I think you're a bit. We need a field trip, Ed. Keep saying that. Come down to Camden sometime, see what you guys are doing.
I want to get an excuse to go to Manchester.
Oh yeah, come up to the Christmas market.
Yeah,
it'll do a swap.
Thanks ever so much. Anything more nationally or regionally from anyone else? Or we're happy to move on. Brilliant. The next question is aimed for Anna, and it's where does the work align with wider information governance areas of activity and upskilling?
Yeah, thank you. And great question. I think I just touched on this in the chat, but we have been running some specific information governance training for data professionals in London. So anyone that's kind of involved in data, whether that's analysts, data project managers, we've had kind of heads of service there as well. So offering that kind of dedicated training, it's in-person session and kind of going beyond just what is offered kind of in-house by councils as kind of standard data protection training, but actually what does it mean to you as someone who works with data, is interacting with data on a regular basis and might be working on data projects at kind of each part of that life cycle. So we've been running 4 of those a year. This year we're doing the same next year, which have been really popular and really well received. So that's kind of one main part of that, and then also in the framework that I spoke about earlier, we do have a competency around information governance in there as well, so making sure that that's kind of a standard part of the skills and knowledge of a data analyst.
Thanks so much. And the next question is for Edward, but I'll be interested for Tim's views from a Manchester perspective as well afterwards. And it's even with London waiting, Camden's analyst salaries look significantly higher than other local authorities I've worked at. Do the job descriptions generally have higher level skills than in many places? Also, were market supplements needed, or were these salaries able to be reached through job evaluation alone?
So we haven't used market supplements, but we have done benchmarking. So our salaries are, compared to other London local authorities, between middle and top. But then, of course, between local authorities and tech firms, banks, they are quite significantly lower. And it goes back to what I was saying previously around the package that you're taking to market, where you need to consider salary as well as all the other elements of the role.
Thanks. And Tim, was there anything from Manchester perspective on that to tap into?
No, nothing really. I mean, we haven't done job evaluation on our roles for a very long time, actually, and obviously, as we start to sort of look at our service in the next few years and the type of skills that we need to attract, that might be something that we do. Our descriptions are very generic, and the problem is how to keep up with technological change with some of those things, because once you've got a JD agreed through job evaluation, it's very difficult to start chucking in loads of extra stuff. So that's they don't move as fast as the tech does, do they? So that's a real issue.
Thanks ever so much. And the next question is for the whole panel. So we'll go across on this one. So today we've heard how data skills are critical across the organisation, plus how skilled data analysts add value and efficiency to support service. Does the panel have a view where the ideal balance is struck? And I'd like to go in presenter order if that's okay. So Lisa and Welna first.
Shall I go? It's fine. I've put an answer there. So I mean, it's really critical that we take the load off specialist data leads. So that's why it's so critical to upskill the wider workforce, so that they can take that bear some of the load, but your specialist data analysts will absolutely still have a place, and a very, very important place in the organization, because they will have that wider view and wider scope. So but where they've dealt with other bits and pieces, that needs to be spread out, and that's why we really need to look at upskilling the wider workforce. I'll pass over to Lisa because I'm sure she's got another view.
No, I think it was a great answer, and I just think ultimately we're trying to democratize data, aren't we? And and we want the organisation to be able to consume and use it. So as much as we can do to educate everybody, I think it's really, really important.
Thanks ever so much, both. And over to Anna for that same question.
Yeah, I also just started to type out a response in the box as well. But I think, yeah, my main point is kind of undoubtedly we need those specialist skilled analysts, but without having the kind of wider data maturity culture awareness as kind of part of the standard of your organization, those analysts won't be able to do their job well, and they need the people that they are working with or who are working above them to be asking them questions and being curious and giving them the space to do that work as well. So I think those two things go hand in hand. And yeah, we've certainly been looking at kind of skills work at more strategic level as well, a kind of head of service level, and getting them comfortable with what it means to use data for decision making, and how you have those conversations with your analysts and ask those things of your data team. So yeah, I think that's where the balance is needed.
Thanks, Anna. And Tim, thank you.
Yeah, great question. And I think, I'm sure lots of us have done those kind of data maturity assessments, and, we certainly score high in terms of having that culture of, having that, got the capacity, and we've got that culture of evidence-based decision making. But organisationally, yeah, definitely sort of in terms of data confidence and digital confidence is mixed, as I'm sure it is across many councils. And I think really key to it is that confidence at the source, so the people who are actually capturing the data at the front line and being able to do that right, because that's where data quality issues can really kick in. And that's definitely an area of focus for us. So yeah, organisationally, yeah, getting that balance right is really challenging. But I think that mix of a centre of excellence that is then going out and working across the council is really good. And the other bit is also thinking about our partners, particularly in the voluntary sector, where they just don't have that, and how can we support our voluntary sector with digital as well.
Thanks ever so much. And finally, Edward, thank you.
Yeah, they are two very, very important things. I also think two quite different things in terms of how you address them. But then I entirely agree with Anna. There's a critical symbiosis there, that if you have a business area, you need them to be managing and maintaining, treating their value like an asset, but then on the other end through the analytics, asking the right questions, having evidence-based conversations to inform their decision making. Camden does have, which I didn't reference in my slides, but a data maturity pathway program that service by service is carrying out a maturity assessment and putting in place a data maturity plan. So that's certainly a very important part of the picture, and good to mention in this context.
Thanks ever so much. We are now out of time. So firstly, I just want to say thank you ever so much to everyone. We really didn't know what to expect from this end. It's a national problem with very local challenges to face. One of the things we've taken away from this afternoon is that this is not just an issue for those with data skills. It takes a whole organisational culture to recognise the value and skills in data, whether it's analytics, engineering, or many more. If you do find these topics useful, please do reach out to us, join our communities and get involved. There's a ton more the LGAs do more widely in data and workforce, and we're here to find the information that you want. A big thank you to our speakers today. Not only have they given up their time to present, but they have really been leaders in the sector, which is great to hear from people so passionate to make a difference. And thank you to everyone for attending this afternoon as well. If you are watching this from record, please do keep an eye out for our events so you can join in the discussions, and have a lovely day, everyone. Thank you very much.